I had never felt anything like it before, and now I know I'll never forget it. I was 68 the first time another man's hands rested on my bare skin after my husband died. Before I unfold the rest of this night, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It really does help more than you know, and if you're drawn into stories like this, I want you here for every one of them. Also tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Are you in a small town where the evenings fall slow and gentle, or in a city where the lights never quite go dark? It didn't happen in a dim restaurant. It didn't happen on a cruise or some dramatic vacation. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon in my own living room, under the soft yellow glow of a floor lamp I'd grabbed off a clearance shelf at Walmart, while the wind pushed dry leaves across the sidewalk outside. In Fairview, Kansas, nothing earth-shattering ever seemed to happen. People grew old. They went to church. They buried the people they loved. They talked about the weather and the price of gas. I thought I was one of those people. A quiet widow who had finished her part in life's drama and was now just sitting in the wings, waiting politely for the curtain to fall. Then Ethan walked through my front door carrying a black therapy bag and a folded massage table. And for the first time in years, my heart forgot it was supposed to be tired. I called the little clinic on Main Street because of a stubborn ache in my right shoulder, the kind that starts as a nagging pain, and then one day you wake up and realize it's simply part of you. The doctor poked and prodded, sent me for an X-ray, then gave me the kind of half-smile doctors give older women. Bit of arthritis, some tendinitis, he said. Nothing serious for someone your age, Dorothy. As if putting those last words on it should have comforted me. He wrote a prescription for anti-inflammatories and slid a pamphlet across the desk. On the front, a young man with kind eyes and strong hands, smiling at someone just out of frame. Ethan Miles, licensed physical therapist. I remember thinking, he looks too young to understand the kind of pain that doesn't go away. Not the achy in joints and tendons. The other kind. The kind that comes from empty chairs at dinner. From half of your closet staying untouched. Still, the nights were getting longer, and I was tired of waking up with my arms stiff and useless. The brochure said he did home visits. That sealed it. I don't like driving at night anymore. Not since Robert's heart stopped in the grocery store parking lot 5 years ago, and for one strange, flashing evening, red ambulance lights painted our little town in panic. So that Tuesday, I straightened the sofa cushions for the 3rd time, wiped down a spotless countertop, and let my eyes land on the framed wedding photo above the TV. Robert in his navy suit, me in my cream dress. Both of us grinning like we believed love could outrun anything. I'm not replacing you, I whispered to the picture, which was ridiculous and somehow necessary. It's just physical therapy. When the doorbell finally rang, my stomach fluttered in a way I hadn't felt in decades. I told myself it was just nerves. A stranger was about to see me in my old sweatpants and loose t-shirt. That was all. I opened the door. He was taller than in the brochure. Wind-tousled brown hair. Eyes the color of strong coffee. He looked surprised for a heartbeat, as if he'd expected someone frailer, more breakable. Then that calm, professional smile settled in place. Mrs. Carter, I'm Ethan. Thanks for having me. His voice was warm Midwestern, steady, polite, not overfamiliar. I stepped aside, suddenly very aware of the faint lavender cleaner in the air and the ticking hallway clock. As he set up his table in the middle of the living room, he asked about the pain. How long I'd had it? What made it worse? I talked about lifting heavy casserole dishes, about reaching for the good china on the top shelf I never used anymore. I didn't mention the nights I lay on my left side because rolling onto my right shoulder hurt just enough to remind me of all the other aches I couldn't point to on a chart. He took notes on a small tablet, nodding every so often. He kept looking up to listen in a way that made me feel like I wasn't a burden on his schedule. Okay, Dorothy, he said finally, using my first name so naturally it didn't feel rude at all. If you're comfortable, I'd like to start with gentle mobilization and some soft tissue work around your shoulder and neck. I'll explain everything as we go. If anything hurts or doesn't feel right, you tell me and we stop. You're in charge here. All right. No one had said those words to me in a long time. After Robert died, it felt like life snatched the steering wheel and never gave it back. "All right," I said. My voice almost surprised me. "I trust you." I wasn't sure yet if I meant it, but I wanted to. I lay on the table, staring up at the ceiling fan my mother had bought 50 years earlier. The faint, clean smell of eucalyptus cream began to fill the air. Outside, a dog barked once and went quiet. He draped a towel across my chest, uncovering only my right shoulder and upper arm. His movements were efficient, not clumsy, not lingering. Then one of his hands slid under my elbow. The other landed just below my collarbone. "I'm going to lift your arm a bit. See how the joint moves," he said. "You just tell me what you notice." His touch was warm. Not in a romantic way, just alive. It startled me more than the motion itself. No one had touched me with that purpose in years. Not to comfort, not to care, not to check in on whether something hurt. As he guided my arm through a small arc, my shoulder complained in a dull, familiar ache. But something else happened too. My chest tightened, not from pain, but from an odd, sudden mix of relief and grief. There was a lump in my throat I hadn't invited. I blinked hard, angry at my own eyes. "It's all right if it's a little uncomfortable," Ethan said, mistaking the gloss in them for pain. "We're just waking things up. That joint's been guarding, trying to protect you." Less guarding. The word echoed in a space that had nothing to do with bone and tendon. How much of me had been guarding, I wondered. How much had gone to sleep when they wheeled Robert's body away? When his thumb found a tight knot of muscle just below the base of my neck, my reaction stunned me. A shiver shot all the way down my spine. My breath caught. It wasn't quite pain. It felt like he'd found some hidden switch I hadn't known was there. Heat rushed into my face. I stared hard at the family photos across the room, me and Robert at a picnic, 20 years younger, laughing like fools. For a moment, every instinct screamed at me to push his hand away, to sit up, to tell him to leave, to slam myself back into that safe, numb little cage I'd spent the last 5 years building. But another, much quieter part of me said to stay. "Feel this. Just this once. Too much," he asked softly, easing up. His voice had to push through the rush in my ears to reach me. "No," I managed. I barely recognized my own voice. "I just haven't felt that in a long time." I prayed he'd hear it as a comment on my stiff muscles. Nothing more. He gave a small, respectful nod, eyes kind, not prying. "We'll go slow," he said. "No need to force anything." He meant my shoulder. My heart heard something else entirely. Lying there under that cheap lamp and the ticking clock, I realized, with something close to fear, that a part of me I thought had been buried with my husband had just opened its eyes, and I knew it wouldn't close them again easily. 2 days later, he came back. I told myself it was because my shoulder really had felt better. Because I'm practical. Because it's therapy. Not because of the way I'd replayed the sound of his knock, or the way my stomach fluttered when I saw his name in my appointment reminder. I wiped down counters that didn't need wiping. Refolded a throw blanket on the couch 3 times. I checked my hair in the mirror once more than was reasonable for a woman my age. "You're being silly?" I whispered to myself. "He's just doing his job." He arrived exactly on time. "Afternoon, Dorothy," he said, that warm half-smile in place. We made small talk while he set up. He told me about his mother in Topeka and the long Sundays he spent driving back and forth to have dinner with her. He mentioned her pot roast. The bad highway construction on the way. The old neighbor's dog that still barked at him like he was 12. His voice softened the hard corners of the house. It had been so long since someone else's stories had filled my kitchen. We worked through the exercises again. The same gentle arcs. The same careful thumb pressure. I was more aware this time. Of everything. The creak of the table. The pattern of his breathing. The exact warmth where his fingers wrapped my arm. "Breathe through it," he said quietly as he stretched my arm overhead. I did, and it felt, for the first time in a long time, like I was breathing life into more than stiff muscles. Halfway through, he paused. "Can I show you something?" he asked. "A movement you can do on your own, without pain." I nodded. He stepped behind me as I sat on the edge of the table. His hand settled lightly on my shoulders. He guided me through a slow rotation, the kind that looks like nothing until you feel where the pain hides. "Good," he murmured, his voice near my ear. "You're doing great." That simple sentence hit harder than it should have. No one had told me I was doing great at anything in a very long time. "I'm trying," I whispered. "I know," he said, and I had the sense he wasn't talking about the exercise at all. By the time he left that day, the fern he'd brought sat on my windowsill. "For your kitchen," he'd said, holding out the small pot. "Plants heal too." I'd laughed, flustered. "You're spoiling your patience." "Only the kind ones," he'd answered. He said it so simply, so without coyness that something shook loose inside me. That night, the wind rattled the old windows, and every creak sounded like the echo of his voice. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling ridiculous. I thought of Robert, of the way he'd touched me when we were newly married, before illness and time carved distance between our bodies. Of how in the last year of his life my hands were all about care, lifting, cleaning, stabilizing, not about closeness. Grief, I realized, doesn't vanish. It shifts shape, into routine, into numbness, into longing you don't feel safe admitting. 2 weeks passed. He came twice a week for therapy, shoulder first. Then sometimes he'd check my neck, my back, showing me small ways to hold myself that didn't hurt as much. We talked while he worked, about his father, gone 10 years, about my Robert, about the absurdity of missing people in grocery store aisles or at red lights. "Sometimes I still reach for my phone to call Dad," he admitted once. "Sometimes I still set the table for 2 without thinking," I replied. We smiled at each other. Sad, knowing smiles you only share with someone else who's had the rug pulled out from under them. Every now and then, his hand would brush somewhere that wasn't strictly clinical. The side of my hand as he adjusted my wrist, the ridge of my jaw as he shifted my head for a stretch. Each tiny contact zinged through me like I'd been plugged back into something I'd disconnected from years ago. I hated how much I craved it. I loved how much I craved it. Both could be true. One afternoon, after 4 sessions, I caught myself humming while doing the dishes. Humming. The sound startled me. I stopped, sponge in mid-air, staring out the kitchen window. The maple tree outside shone bright with leaves, sunlight glittering like coins between branches. It had been there every fall. I just hadn't looked. Ethan was due at 3. I told myself my heart beating faster around noon was just because I didn't want the stretches to hurt. He showed up on time, but more subdued. There were faint shadows under his eyes. "You okay?" I asked. "Rough week," he said. "My mom's health is up and down. A lot of driving. A lot of worry. I made tea." This time when I offered him a cup, he said yes. We sat at my kitchen table, 2 mismatched mugs between us. He told me about waiting rooms and doctors who speak in percentages. About watching his mother, the woman who used to chase him with a dish towel, shuffle with a cane. When he reached for the tea, his fingers brushed mine. Neither of us moved away right away. Then he said something that lodged in my ribs. "Grief doesn't disappear, Dorothy. It just changes what kind of person you are. Sometimes," he added, "you meet someone who understands it so well that it doesn't feel as heavy when you stand next to them." His eyes met mine as he said it. Suddenly, I was hyper-aware of the space between us, of my own mouth, of every wrinkle in my shirt. I stood too fast, pretending to refill my tea. "You should rest," I said, my back to him. "All that driving must be exhausting." "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable," he said quietly. "You didn't," I whispered. The part of me that was afraid wished he had. It's easier to pull away from something ugly than from something tender. At our next appointment, things were different. He unfolded the table but moved slower. His instructions were precise. His hands, when they found my shoulder blade or guided my arm, were careful with a new kind of distance. He was trying to build a wall neither of us could fully see but both of us could feel. I wanted to thank him and scream at him all at once. When he finished the session, I stayed